This weekend, we were all supposed to get a good look at the new Sanction Island maps that were featured in an ICO playtest not long ago. However, the update has been pulled because there were some bugs featured in the playtest. So, we don't have that, but we have something else that may be even more significant. Like, who are these guys? But before we dive in, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below, and let's get to it. If you've been keeping up with some of the leaks, rumors, and some of the information being passed around, you may have heard that Turkey may be a new faction coming to Squad. And this appears to be one of our first in-game confirmations of that faction making its way to the game. There was a specific layer in the playtest where you could actually queue up on the Turkey faction, specifically Al Basra Invasion 9. Now, obviously, this is not feature complete or game ready. I'm not even sure if they intended to leave it in. But this is something that I wanted to see because I'm really excited about new factions out of the game along with maps and plenty of other stuff. It does look like many of the character models are in place along with the camo and some basic things, but it does appear that some of the kits may be incomplete. So I took a quick look at a lot of the different weaponry and stuff like that that is at least included, and you can get an idea of maybe what we'd be working with this faction. So one of the main weapons seems to be the MPT-76. You're going to get this with a magnified scope, iron sights, or a holographic sight across different kits. You'll also see certain kits with a foregrip. While I know this is probably not quite tuned as it needs to be, the automatic firing of this is pretty wild. You'll see this same weaponry across things like Rifleman, Grenadier, and Squad Lead, with kits being pretty straightforward and something you'd expect. Well, kind of. That is until you pull one of the Grenadier kits that happens to have a fun little extra weapon in the form of a grenade launcher. This thing is wild, and I'm really excited to see how this is used, but I'm also very concerned. The Grenadier is going to have two options with this weapon, either high explosive or smoke grenades. I can only imagine how this is going to play out with Squad version 6 and ICO in full effect, because this is going to be intense if used against you. I can see this being used very heavily towards clearing out an enemy objective and also covering troops, especially with the smoke launcher side of this. For the machine gunners out there, you're going to be rolling with a PMT-76 and a magnified scope, which operates pretty much as one would expect. There's also an MG3 kit for machine gunners as well without any sort of sight. The marksmen out there are going to have the KNT-76. One cool detail about many of these weapons is that they have clear mags, so you can actually see your bullets in the magazine when you're reloading. Another weapon you're going to see out there is the SAR-109T, which is a fast-firing weapon. Should be a lot of fun in close quarters combat. This is included with kits like crewman and pilot. So that's a quick look at some of the kits you're going to have as infantry. Now let's take a quick look at some of the vehicles that I was able to find on the map. In checking the vehicle list, I saw a bunch of different stuff, including Cobra armored cars, ACV infantry fighting vehicles. There's also the ACV APC and the PARS 3, which comes in several different variants. However, I didn't see the Cobra 2 actually on the map for me to try out. We are going to take a look at many of these other vehicles. At quick glance, some of these vehicles are going to be tracked, some are wheeled. But this is one of those factions that may give you a ton of mobility in armored vehicles, beyond just light vehicles, which is welcomed considering this is a huge help since ICO is now in place with version 6. So what sort of weaponry do we have on some of these vehicles? Well, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive, and I'm just going to scan through these to give you some basic impressions of what you should expect or what you could expect once this releases, again, once it's finished. So first, we're going to look at the PARS 3 Mark 19 RWS, which gives you a grenade launcher that is remote operated on top of an armored vehicle, but you are limited to just the Mark 19. There's no 50 cal or 240 or something like that attached as well, which may make it a little bit more vulnerable. Next up, we have the ACV-15 IFV, or infantry fighting vehicle. This is a tracked vehicle that comes complete with a 25mm cannon, including armor-piercing, sabot rounds, and HE rounds. I will add that while driving a couple of the vehicles just a little bit, I did feel like their tracked vehicles felt a lot like driving a T-Lab with a little bit more weight to it. Not sure if that's the best comparison, but that's sort of what I got out of it. Of course, we have the PARS 3 M2 RWS, which is a Browning machine gun on top of something that seems just like a striker, basically. Obviously, we'll have to see how the armor holds up to get a better comparison. And we can't forget about the MG3 open top, which is going to be intimidating to hear, especially if you're running some infantry. I was able to get a sneak peek at this as well, the Turkish tank, the M60T. be curious to see how this tank holds up. It does feel like the chassis is a little bit smaller than what we may be accustomed to from many other tanks. It also has a little bit of that leopard look on the front with the sloped turret. Now, I'm keeping an open mind because I don't think this is complete by any means, but I didn't notice anything crazy surprising about the gunner seat, except that you actually do get smoke rounds, much like you do with the Challenger. The Commander also has an HMG in the M85. Well, I can't forget that we have a UH-1H Hilo with MG3s mounted to the sides. There's also one vehicle that is so significant that I had to save it to the end, and that is the BMC-185 logistics trucks and transport truck. The logistics truck, as of right now, is a covered vehicle, and I'm curious to see how many guys this actually will hold. It does look a little bit compact, and the transport is actually a cool variation of the same thing. I love that there's a small detail like this, like the cover being pulled up, to be able to tell a difference from a visual perspective. So what are my overall impressions here? Well, first of all, whether OWI meant to leave it in or not, I thought it was pretty cool to be able to take a look at this new faction on its way. With some of the recent Red 4 factions added, including the PLA Marines, the Russian VDV, I kind of figured we were due up for a Blue 4 faction of some sort. Turkey, though, was not something that I had considered. I was more so expecting France or Germany. However, this is kind of welcomed as it's something very different from what I expected. So while we haven't seen everything that the Turkish faction has to offer, I will say there is some theorizing that I've made here in terms of what I think this faction is going to lend itself to. First of all, we saw a lot of APC or IFVs that can handle a decent amount of troops. That's probably going to lend itself very well to version 6 with the infantry combat overhaul changes. And I think this also pits itself well against some of the newer factions we've seen on the Red 4 side, considering you have stuff like the Russian VDV and the PLA Marines that have a bunch of armored vehicles. Perhaps the Turkish faction is really set up to be more of a mech infantry assault type of faction, which is, again, welcomed because of version 6 and something we need to lean more on as we continue to play squad with some of the recent updates. And I'm just basing that off the fact that we have a bunch of APCs and IFVs that seem pretty mobile with a bunch of different functionalities between them. Obviously, once this is in game and live, we'll see really how the vehicles stand up to other vehicles in squad, but I do see this as something where you could actually operate really closely between vehicles and infantry and probably do really well at assaulting. I just feel like each vehicle lends itself in a specific direction, so overlapping some of that functionality may be really important. Now, from a kit's perspective, nothing really was that shocking except for obviously the grenade launcher. I also felt like the Turkish magnified scope was pretty balanced across the board. It didn't lean one way as in covering too much of your screen, it also didn't seem too small. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. Automatic fire on some of the main weapons that you'd use across many of the different roles and kits was a little bit wild, but that's not totally unexpected given this is not complete and we're still dealing with some of the changes with ICO. Anyways, that's my quick overall impressions of what I've seen from this playtest and the brief time that I was able to dive in and get some footage for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this quick look at the Turkish faction. Please let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. Also, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and I'll catch you guys next time.